You decide to issue a post, and where did you on social media? I think it was Facebook. Was that where you primarily were posting?
I had two social media platforms. It was Facebook and LinkedIn. Most military officers don't have social media. In fact, I didn't have social media until 2018. But I had launched a business as a major, and because I had launched that business, I needed social media. And so I had a couple thousand followers on each platform. I think I had just enough to kind of light the fire when I ended up posting what I did. So yeah, it was Facebook and LinkedIn were the two platforms.
Mm-hmm. And the first post was in August. And was it before or after the death of the 13 service personnel?
It was the same day. So I was in my office. You got to understand it. I didn't just make that decision that day. I mean, this is something that had been building up. So I have a master's in military science. I specialized my thesis on foreign diplomacy. I've been thinking about how we could do this more effectively for a long time. Obviously, I have the experiences in the countries where I saw some things that we did that were highly ineffective. And then, in current day, I was watching the Afghanistan fallout real time on social media, on the news, and I was getting frustrated. And then my senior leaders were making messages that basically said, go to the therapist if you're struggling, but they weren't accepting accountability as far as I saw it. And so when the deaths happened, you got to also understand it was the Unit 1-8. It was my first unit. That was the unit I went to Ramadi with. My best friend got hit with the suicide vest. It was very personal for me. Also, when I was the operations officer, they were in my regiment. I'm the one that trained, manned, equipped them, and sent them out on deployment from what a higher headquarters does. Obviously, they do all the training themselves, but from a higher headquarters, I knew everybody in that unit. And so when it happened, I just got to a place where I knew without a doubt that no senior leaders were held accountable. And I knew, based on all my experiences, that this was very preventable. And so I just felt like no one else is going to address this. And I think a lot of American people don't understand the true fundamental problems that are plaguing the military. And I know you started the interview with January 6th and political, and I know there is some politicalization in the military, but the truth is the systemic problems go, through both parties.
Yeah,
the
you've
problems
been critical
facing the
of
military
Dems
are
and Republicans
fundamental.
in the White House.
Yes. And so I just want to make sure that we understand that people have been lionizing and saying thank you for so long because they want to be supportive, and we appreciate that. But because of the lack of criticism, it's just created these problems that nobody was addressing. So that led me to the day of the attack. I posted a video, and the takeaway from the video was, you abandoned Bagram Air Base. You didn't have to do that. You allowed the situation to deteriorate to a place where you were relying on the Taliban for security. And then there was an attack that was preventable that took the lives of service members. And I demand accountability for this. And that was the video I posted.
Let's take a look at some of that. Here's soundbite 1, which is an excerpt from Stuart's video, August 26, 2021.
I'm not saying we've got to be in Afghanistan forever, but I am saying, did any of you throw your rank on the table and say, hey, it's a bad idea to evacuate Bagram Airfield, the strategic air base, before we evacuate everyone? Did anyone do that? And when you didn't think to do that, did anyone raise their hand and say, we completely messed this up?
And then just to add on, here's a little bit more. Same day, soundbite number 2, adding on. Stuart.
I want to say this very strongly. I have been fighting for 17 years. I am willing to throw it all away to say to my senior leaders, I demand accountability.
Wow. What a moment that was. So when you did that, did you realize you could get in trouble?
Oh, absolutely. So after I made the video, I actually didn't post it right away. I drove back to my house. There's a soundbite in the middle that says, I know I'm jeopardizing my family, my retirement, my job. And so, I articulated even in the video that I had thought through it. But even after I made that video, I drove back to my house, hadn't posted it, and was pacing around my house, deciding whether or not I really wanted to go down that route, because I knew how life-changing it would be. But like I said, this is just very personal. I'm very passionate. I've spent my whole adult life thinking, living this, and there just wasn't anything that was more important. And so, with a click of the button, you post it, and then it kind of took off from there.
Mm-hmm. I know you felt like nobody was really calling them out, demanding accountability within the military. Outside of the military, there were many people doing it, right? There was half the country who was outraged, and even Democrats and even some of the mainstream press that would normally be more protective of President Biden were not as protective in the wake of all of this. So why wasn't that enough? Why did you feel it had to come from a man in uniform?
Well, first of all, even though, let's just use Congress, for example, all got opportunities to use their sound bites of anger towards the generals, they didn't do anything. So talk is not enough. So I'll give you an example. Each one of those apolitical Congress people that demanded accountability 6 days previous to that congressional testimony to the three generals, they approved one of the largest DOD budgets, and nobody stood against the DOD budget and demanded metrics of effectiveness or accountability, because that would have taken courage. So it was easy to tap into the people's anger, but it was much harder to actually use the leverage of control that they have against the DOD budget. And so, I get it. People in the aftermath are going to talk about it, but then the news cycle is going to move on and nothing happens, i.e. Vietnam. So these problems have plagued us post World War II. And quite honestly, nobody is doing anything. And I thought a guy in uniform with the experiences that I have, with the education that I have, it was very important to start this conversation. And I'm one of these guys that's not going to let it go. Once I'm in the fight, I'm going to fight to the end. And I'm going to make sure that we bring the changes that are needed, because quite honestly, all those people that talked about it right after the fact, they're on to talking about other things. And here I am still doing the rounds because this is still very important. And these are problems that need to be fixed.
That's so true. What were the other options available to you? So if you want to speak out and say, where's the accountability? Was there a way of doing it that would not have gotten you in trouble?
There are always ways within the system to address it. You could have done an IG complaint. You could have just talked to your boss. You could have requested masks. But I did all those things after the fact, to be fair, about other things. And I don't know if it was just based on, everyone was mad at me, but they basically just denied all of those things. So to me, it was just an example of the system doesn't work the way you think it will. And, I calculated, everything I did was calculated. And I knew, had I gone through those processes, that they would have been stonewalled. They wouldn't have got the attention. The whole point of this was to start a conversation, and going through the appropriate channels wouldn't have started the conversation that's needed. There's still professional articles that are coming out within the military circles saying exactly what you just said, Megyn. Like, why didn't he go into a professional publication and voice it? And he could have saved his career. But the bottom line is all these professional publications are mostly controlled by retired generals. And even the ones that aren't, my question would be to all the people in these professional publications, how many of those articles have prevented failure over the last 60 years? Like, none of them, right? Mm-hmm. So if we keep doing the same thing and we keep having the same failures, at what point do we do something differently?